Right, onwards and upwards. We've got a long climb ahead of us, and that climb is going to occasionally be interrupted as we retreat for more resources. Wait, so we go through one dungeon to get to the next, which... that's going to make retreating for supplies just a little bit more inconvenient. Bit of an odd decision, but then I suppose this game is full of odd decisions. Well, we found the way to Eureka, so we may as well use the Eureka key. Now let's see just what kind of weapons they have sitting there waiting for us. I'm sure a good chunk of them are going to be tools that we're not going to be allowed to use since we're not using the specific classes they are meant for. Though I hope I'm wrong. Anyway, looks like our first random encounter in here is Sleipnir. Apparently Odin's legendary horse has become a common breed for some reason. Ooh, sounds like the background music is starting to have a choir. That's certainly interesting. And it also looks like we're going to be taking an absolute pounding as we try to collect the various weapons in here. Ah well, it's not like we're in a hurry to take down the main villain or anything like that. Part of me wants to be relieved that Brett was the only one to get knocked out. The other is just staring at Brett on the ground and annoyed that it's been such a common sight for him in this game. Right. Neither of those were the weapons we're looking for. I doubt the other two boxes in this floor are gonna be weapons either. Still, no harm in grabbing them just for the sake of it. Who knows, one of them might have something that makes Brett less prone to get knocked down. But seriously, it feels like Brett and Midori have taken the lion's share of the abuse in this game. Physically, at least. It's not like the narrative is anywhere near detailed enough for them to deal with any psychological issues on top of all that. Down to 39 high potions already. Yeah, there's absolutely no way we're gonna make it anywhere near the final boss anytime soon if we're taking this kind of a beating from the random encounters. We haven't even seen any bosses yet. Still, the more of these fights we go through, the more prepared we're going to be for the bigger fights. Or at least I hope that's gonna be the case. Well, nobody knocked out that time, though that was still quite the pounding all around. Well, at least this floor isn't an especially complicated maze. It's just annoyingly large with 2 rooms for us to explore, and 2 staircases for us to try going down. Bloody hell. Part of me feels like this section of this dungeon within a dungeon within a dungeon is gonna be enough to force us to retreat for supplies. I really wish there were more we could have done to prepare to enter this place, but we literally did everything available in the game before this point, even the side stuff. In its own way, the final dungeon is a difficulty spike in most games, but not the kind of difficulty bullshit of forcing you to change your team composition to have any chance of survival. I certainly appreciate that it feels more organic, oddly enough, so I'm not gonna really lose patience over it. I'm just hoping that none of the bosses on our way to the end are gonna require us to shift to specific classes in order to get through them. And it probably says something that I don't want this game to do anything that leans on the primary gimmick of the game in the final dungeon. Part of me wants to ask where the game got the name Hauka, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't really matter. After all, it looks like a recolor of something we've dealt with earlier, just with higher stats. I know the green version was in the dungeon that had a lot of monsters that could spawn more of themselves, but I don't remember if the green version of that monster was one of the ones that did that. Also pretty sure there was a green version of these things there as well. I kind of wish I had more to say about the Abaya creatures, considering they're the ones most responsible for draining our high potions here. Seriously, each one can take an absolute pounding. Those magic attacks hit damn hard and can hit our entire party at once. These things should feel downright nightmarish, but I'm actually kind of enjoying dealing with them. And when I think about it, I honestly feel like 3 or 4 of those things could legitimately have had a chance of taking down Leviathan. That feels like such a weird thing for me to say about a random encounter, but honestly, I feel like those things could stand a legitimate chance of beating one of the game's bonus bosses. Okay. So the random ninja from a box is also obscenely capable of causing massive amounts of damage. Have I mentioned that the enemies at this stage of the game feel like a massive jump in terms of how much damage they can take and how much damage they can send out? Because I can't remember the last time I've ever dealt with all the bonus dungeons and felt obscenely underprepared for the final dungeon of a game. I'm used to the bonus dungeons being a leap in difficulty that would help make the final dungeon feel easier to deal with, but maybe this game was made before that sort of thing really became a standard for game design or something. Well, the feathered hat wouldn't be a good thing to switch to Azul to here. Still, it was worth checking if we could somehow upgrade 2 mages with 1 freshly gained item. I'm pretty sure that I should have used some black magic in that fight. Hell, I probably should have been more free to use black magic, considering how little damage our mages do with their staves. But I'm pretty sure if I did that, then we'd run out of magic faster than we'd run out of healing items. Then I'm pretty sure I'd have the same thought if we had an actual MP system in this game. I just very much prefer to use physical attacks, so I tend to favor physical classes. But the Black Mage is just so capable of carrying our team in a boss fight, and the White Mage has healing spells that make all but the best of healing items seem pathetic in comparison. And it's not like we can really predict when we're gonna run into a boss, how many floors it might be. Hell, in the original Final Fantasy, we had to fight against the revived elemental fiends in the middle of hallways in the final dungeon. And in some versions of that game, they pop up as if they were random encounters with no warning. So yeah, I'm just not very trusting of this dungeon. Can you blame me? Especially considering how Final Fantasy 1 and 4 dealt with their final dungeons. While I'm not 100% sure that all Japanese role-player games jack up the difficulty as much as they can get away with in the final dungeon, the fact that it happened in 2 of the major titles in this same series so far is kind of a rough sign for me, or at least the 2 titles that I've done a full Let's Play on so far. Anyway, it's also disconcerting that just walking around in this place has got the choir singing to make things just that little bit more epic, but annoying that we go back to the same generic battle theme for every fight, ruining the flow of that epic song. This is a genre-defining franchise, and we haven't even reached some of its absolute best entries yet, but we're still having a good amount of fun. Hell, if you look closely enough, you can see some of the DNA of the early Final Fantasy games in a lot of other Japanese role players. It's just kind of depressing to think about how massive and impactful Final Fantasy used to be in the industry and how it's gone from setting the trends to being essentially a stumbling grandpa. I mean, seriously, 13, 15, and 16 were not putting butts in the seats the same way that 6, 7, and 10 were. Though 14 has certainly been very successful, and I feel guilty that I am not an MMO guy. And when we get to any of those good single-player games, oh boy, they're gonna make even the good titles like 5, 9, and 12 look underwhelming in comparison. Before we do anything about that, or any of the other Japanese-made role-player games out there, we've got to work our way through this one. And we are getting painfully close to the end of this game. We just need to keep pushing. As a side note, Carmine is nearly level 100 for his job at the moment, much like with Azul when he was a black mage. That kinda tempts me to change his class for the sake of letting him continue to level up his classes, even if I have absolutely no clue what that even does for our heroes. Seriously, if there's some kind of reward for getting multiple classes to level 100 aside from a Steam achievement, I have no clue. It's not like the game itself made that very clear. Good God, is it even a good idea for me to keep pushing forward right now when we've got less than 10 high potions at this point? Sure, we're getting stronger as we level up in this dungeon, fighting like hell, but we're still getting ground down to a fine pace. Well, looks like we're about to enter a slightly more wide chamber within the hallways. Definitely a good sign that there's something important there. Hopefully we're ready for it. Well, that's a familiar-looking sprite. I'm tempted to say that's a familiar name as well. Though maybe that's just because I've seen that name outside of the Final Fantasy franchise. Maybe it isn't an absolute repeat of that annoying bastard from early on. Oof. Well, that was a hard hit to Brett, but he can certainly take hits of that caliber without too much trouble. Though it looks like this guy is kind of shrugging off the physical attacks and we need to rely more on the magical ones, which is very familiar. Yeah, and I somehow doubt he has as little health as he did when he essentially stonewalled me in the 3D version of this same fucking game earlier on. Anyway, it's a bit disappointing that Azul's second Quake didn't do as much damage as his first. But then, all of our damage seems to be a bit inconsistent for some reason. Ah well, we've still got plenty of stamina. Oh, hell, I was hoping it wasn't that guy again. I was hoping it was a palette swap for that guy that wouldn't have the same gimmick. I guess I was just wishful thinking on my part. Oh well, at least we're not limited to magic that can only strike lightning, fire, and ice elementals. We've got more spells than that in our arsenal. At the very least, his barrier ship doesn't seem to do all that much to block wind or earthquakes. Part of me feels like maybe it would be funny to send ground-type and flying-type Pokemon against Amon here. Not that they exist, period, when this game was released. And And also, when I double-check the maximum stats of Pokemon, even the strongest of them, they just weren't built for the kind of damage numbers being thrown around in this game. Final Fantasy is generally on the high end when it comes to protagonist health, and downright insane when it comes to antagonist health. Whereas Pokemon is generally on the low end of the stat spectrum, so every hit, even the not very effective ones, have some measure of impact. I'm sorry, Brett. Was that supposed to be a critical hit? The sound effect there certainly gave me that impression, but the damage numbers certainly didn't. Probably a good idea to heal Carmine when this round is over. It definitely feels like it's random when our physical attacks have some harsh impacts and when it's just a glorified trickle. If nothing else, I'm pretty sure we're gonna outlast this guy at any rate. Though maybe I'm underestimating just how much abuse he can take. Yeah. Doesn't matter how much you change your resistances. The things I'm hitting you for are completely outside of your wheelhouse. Well, we're out of Quakes. Hopefully Bio is a good alternative. Holy shit, Bio is doing more than Quake could. It's funny, every time I've used Quake, it feels like it just underperforms around here. Why is it considered such a high-level spell again? And that does it. Amon is dead yet again. Doomed to have his name stolen by Avatar Legend of Korra and StarCraft 2. It certainly didn't look like any kind of blade when we picked it up. It looked more like a shield of some kind. And apparently it's some kind of boomerang weapon, and it can be used by both Knights and Dark Knights for some reason. It feels more like a straight-up upgrade to Brett, though, so we're putting it on him. Anyway, that felt pretty eventful for one clip. Time to retreat, rest, and replenish our supplies before making our next push. Part of me feels like I should have kept the encounters on, if only so we could level up some more on our way out, but yeah. We took most of the abuse on the way in, and just trying to get back from here would have been a grind. Hell, when I think about it, the Pixel Remaster of Final Fantasy III is possibly the only version of it I can actually play from beginning to end. It has just enough conveniences thrown in to make the game as a whole feel less infuriating to me, though it's still finding ways to get on my nerves. Maybe I'm just staring at the 3D remake of Final Fantasy III still sitting on my Steam account, knowing that I got absolutely stonewalled by Amon before we could even leave the floating continent, and wondering if at some point I'll try to go through that version of the game again, while at the same time wondering why Final Fantasy 3 and 4 got to have 3D remakes, but 1, 5, and most definitely 6 were for some reason left behind in 2D. Seriously, people have been clamoring for a remake of Final Fantasy VI for a long time, And for some reason, Square Enix seems absolutely horrified by the idea of taking on that particular project. Huh. Guess I didn't bother to turn the random encounters pack on just yet for some reason. Ah well, I suppose that gives us more resources to work with when we get to the tower itself in the next clip.